Okay, right. So welcome everyone, as I said, to today's grief talk with the title Nature as a Resource for Coping with Grief. So first of all, the slide is moving very slowly today. Oh, here we go. So first of all, some housekeeping. Our agenda for today's grief talk is a little bit different maybe to previous grief talks, in that given our topic, I am hoping to bring you all into nature today. And while obviously I can't physically bring you there, I am hoping to get you there through your own imagination and a guided imagery exercise of a forest walk I've brought along for today. Now, I know these kind of exercises are not everyone's cup of tea, but I would just invite you to give it a try today. Or if that just really isn't for you today, then please feel free to just get yourself maybe a nice cup of tea or something like that in the 5 minutes the guided imagery exercise will take at the beginning of today's grief talk. And then I suppose meet us back at the second part of today's session, which is the presentation part of the session, which I've prepared for you today around the benefits of nature for health and coping, and how to practically engage with nature for that purpose. After the presentation, then we will move into the Q&A and discussion part of today's grief talk, in which it would be lovely, I suppose, to hear from all of you here today of how nature may have helped you in your grief, if you are happy to share that with the group today. We have some rules for today's session. So I would ask that for the guided imagery and presentation part of today's session, please keep your microphone muted. Whether you want to have your camera on or off is up to you. I don't mind either way. Just then for the Q&A part of the session, it would be lovely if as many of you as are comfortable could turn on your camera, as that tends to help with kind of getting conversation going. I suppose at the same time, I understand for some people that might feel too much today. If that's the case, you know, there is no pressure. You make your own decision for yourself around that. Also, I would ask that you treat each other with kindness today. Everyone here has been through difficult times, and I would just ask that you meet each other where you're at, that you listen to each other, that you don't interrupt each other, and that you treat whatever somebody decides to share here in this group today with confidentiality, that you don't go repeating other people's stories outside of the group here today. Okay, so that's the housekeeping part. So let's get to it. Let's start with our guided imagery exercise for today. Guided imagery is a therapeutic technique that uses the power of the mind to form peaceful and soothing images to enhance an individual's sense of well-being. Various forms of guided imagery have been used for many, many centuries and across various different cultures. And really, during a guided imagery exercise, you can either imagine a place that you know, that you're familiar with, or you can let your mind conjure up a totally new place. And the crucial part is that you're imagining a positive place, a calm and soothing place that makes you feel good in some way. Now, I know that is often easier said than done, so please be patient with yourself doing this exercise today, which really, it's the idea is to give you a taster of this technique, which allows you, I suppose, to harness the benefits of nature without actually having to leave the comfort of your own home. So, now begin by just taking a couple of deep breaths in, filling your lungs with air and breathing out slowly. Allowing your entire body to settle and relax now. If your legs or arms are crossed, please uncross them and settle yourself into a comfortable position. With your eyes closed or barely open, begin to shift your attention away from the world around you to your inner world of imagination. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a field. It's the perfect kind of day to be outside. The temperature is pleasant. Overhead, the sky is a bright blue. The sunlight surrounds you with healing light and warms you through and through. You see a tree line where a forest begins only a few meters away. Just on the other side of the tree line, you see a trail, so you walk towards it, entering into the woods. It smells fresh and soothing of earth and wood. The sunlight in the forest cascades down through the leaves in a soft spray of light. The layers of forest have various textures. The lower undergrowth is soft and green. There are ferns, mosses, and small growths reaching towards the light. The upper canopy of the trees covers you like a stained glass roof overhead. The light green leaves against the blue sky create a soft, glowing, ambient light. The light is gentle and soothing. The path you're walking upon winds down a slight hill and curves. It's well trodden, and you continue to follow it. Once you round the corner, you see a stream. You continue towards it. As you near the stream, you can hear the rippling water sounds getting louder in a constant rhythm. You see the rocks just under the surface of the water. The water swirls around some and pours over others. You decide to sit upon a large tree that has fallen over, and you slip your shoes off and dip your bare feet in the stream. The water is very cold, but it instantly soothes your feet. As you adjust to the cold, you notice that the water is swirling around and over your feet. As the water massages your feet, you can hear birds chirping. There are several different birds sounding. You can also hear the breeze fluttering through the leaves on the trees. You close your eyes and enjoy the sounds. After you rest for a while, enjoying your surroundings, you decide that you are ready to leave. You grab your shoes, put each one on, and step to the dry bank of the stream. You see the path that brought you here and start back up the hill and around the bend. As you walk back, many of the trees seem familiar. You see the bright entrance to your path up ahead. As you approach the entrance, you stop and linger. You turn around and look down the path, taking note of what you are seeing and hearing. You can visit this special place anytime you'd like in your mind. Finally, you exit the forest and find yourself in a bright field. You open your eyes and return back to the present moment. So coming back into this webinar and back to your screens that you were looking at, I hope that that little exercise maybe gave you a sense of the soothing effect that nature can have, how it can make you feel to be in nature. So having had the experience, now let's see what research has to say about it. There is actually a substantial amount of scientific research on the benefits of nature on human health available, which proposes that nature has a nurturing effect on human physical, emotional, and psychological well-being through innate, so inbuilt physical mechanisms in our bodies. In that context, research has been able to show that being in nature supports things like the regulation of blood pressure, it improves the immune system, it lowers stress levels, and it boosts mood. And interestingly, those benefits of nature on human health get observed in all sorts of different natural environments. You know, whether that is parks and woodlands, or hills and mountains, or coastal areas, lakes or rivers. And those benefits of nature are seen whether somebody is physically active, so walking, cycling, swimming, so on, or is physically inactive, so just sitting, relaxing, lying down in nature. The positive impact is always there, and it means that really you don't need to be physically fit or be physically able to go for big heights to harness the benefits of nature. And even when nature was only taken in through one sense, so by only looking at a nature image, only listening to nature sounds, the way I had them playing through the imagery exercise, or by smelling nature scents, for example, even when it's only one sense that is taken in nature, then those innate physiological responses to nature can be observed in the body. And in that way, nature is, I suppose, a very easily accessible way of looking after yourself, of minding yourself, of engaging in this idea of self-care, which often after bereavement is very much needed. Before the bereavement, there may have been, a long period of caring for a loved one, which is draining and takes a toll. And generally, grief impacts a person in all sorts of different ways, impacts you, physically and emotionally, psychologically, socially. So there is often a lot of self-care needed after bereavement. And I suppose nature is a place where that can happen quite easily. There are many different ways many different theories that exist as to why nature is beneficial to human health. One of them is that, I suppose, through evolution, we are perfectly adapted to nature. Across human history, we have spent 99.9% of our time in natural environments. And really, the urban environments that most of us live in these days are actually relatively new in human history. And because we're not as well adapted to these urban environments that we live in, they actually often cause us stress. So the theory is that being in nature is actually more natural to us, to our bodies, and thus helps us to relax. That is one theory. Another one is that nature hones the realistic perception of our own power, so what we can and can't control. So if you think about being in nature, whether that is, watching the tides come and go, or seeing the seasons change, or confronting the sheer force within the earth that has created all the mountains around the world, being in nature gets us in touch with these laws of nature, the existential givens beyond our control that govern our world. We accept that the sun will rise and set, that summer will turn to autumn, that a plant will grow and eventually die. And I suppose by being in nature, we as humans can feel like we are part of the greater whole that is nature, can accept that we are governed by the same laws of nature, can maybe come to accept that death is part of life, something that we can't have control over. Equally though, when in nature, when we're walking, swimming, or observing in nature, we can also get a sense of the things that we can control, the things that we have power over. Getting in touch with one's own power in one's own body in the present moment can be quite a helpful experience when going through grief. To see yourself take another step, to feel another breath filling your lungs, to keep listening, observing, and smelling nature all around you can provide comfort, can give hope that life beyond the loss of a loved one is possible. So I suppose that interplay between accepting the uncontrollable, but finding power within to keep living is something that often, I suppose, comes up after a bereavement, when everyday life can seem so utterly overwhelming and accepting one's loss can feel impossible. So there are many reasons why nature may be a helpful resource in grief. But what is actually really important, though, is that whatever nature experience you might want to try or use to cope with your grief, that it actually aligns with what your individual preference is. So the research says quite clearly that you will have most benefit from being in nature if the nature that you're in is, either something that you enjoy doing or is something that you can connect with, something that resonates with you, is meaningful to you, and in your grief is maybe something that connects you with the person you lost. So somebody who loves the sea, who would have often gone down to the beach with the person they lost, is better off going down to the beach and sitting there observing the waves than, say, going out climbing a mountain if that doesn't actually mean anything to them. It doesn't, I suppose, provide the same kind of soothing comfort that we often seek out by being in nature. So with that in mind, I thought for the remaining part of the presentation, I was going to talk to you about 4 different nature activities or nature experiences that you could try. And I suppose while listening to those, I would encourage you to kind of check in with yourself if any of those resonate with you, if any of those seem appealing to you. Because chances are, if they are appealing to you, if they resonate with you, then those are also the ones that you are more likely to benefit from. So the first one we have here is our nature walks and hikes. There is many examples in literature and in film describing walking and hiking in nature as a transformative experience in the context of grief, loss, and personal crisis. The experience of often long-distance hiking, providing a space for reflection and personal growth, representing a turning point in somebody's life. And likewise, a systematic review of 17 studies supports the positive effects of nature-based walking interventions. And really, we're in Ireland, we're very fortunate that there is lots and lots of walks and hikes out there that you could do, with all sorts of different options available depending on your own physical ability. I think always though with going into nature, it's important to be prepared, to be mindful, to mind your own ability so that you are safe. So that's why I included some resources here. There is lots and lots of websites out there that detail different walks and advise walkers on how to stay safe when out there walking. And I've just included one link there. If it is something that you want to look up, you might get your phone and take a photo of the screen. That can be a good way of remembering it. But also, as I said, if you want to have access to the video afterwards, you can email me and we can arrange that. There is also lots of books that have touched upon the subject, and I've included just a few different ones here that you can look up and see if you might want to read, if it might be helpful to you to have a read of one of those. So then the second nature activity or experience I'd like to tell you a little bit more about is called Shinrin-yoku, which literally translated means forest bathing. Forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku, is the Japanese practice of slow, mindful walking through forest, taking in nature with all senses. It's walking without the aim of exercise or trying to get anywhere. Its purpose really is to calm overstimulation caused by our urban environments. And I might add also, I suppose, in how overwhelming grief can feel. This idea of mindful walking, taking in nature with all senses, I suppose fits quite well to, I suppose, calm the overwhelming sensations that can go with grief and to promote relaxation and restoration. Shinrin-yoku can be practiced individually or as part of a group. And there is, guided walks offered in various locations all over Ireland. And there's also some apps and handouts that can help you sort of learn about Shinrin-yoku and plan your own forest bathing experience. There's been many books written about the subject, and I just included one here that is quite short, so it's quite accessible, that you might want to read to find out more about it. Also, Forestry England offers a beginner's guide to forest bathing on their website. I have the link included here. And Forest Bathing Wicklow has a nice little app that you can download for free on their website, which has all sorts of invitations for different exercises you can do in nature on it. So then the next nature activity that might be appealing to you is gardening. Systematic review of 22 studies supports the benefits of gardening related activities on various different health outcomes. And in the context of grief, I suppose gardening is often described as a space for existential reflection, sort of linking in with the idea of becoming aware of the laws of nature and accepting the cycle of life. Engaging in gardening can be helpful in that way. But also, though, gardening is a very multi-sensory experience, and therefore can help with coming into the present moment to manage some of the overwhelming feelings that can go with grief. So feeling the earth while gardening, smelling plants all around, listening to the sounds of nature, birds that might be around, it's often that part that is perceived as helpful in gardening. And I suppose gardening can be done indoors, can be done in pots, can be done on a balcony, can be done outside in a garden if you're fortunate to have one. It also can be done as part of a community garden, which then combines the benefits of gardening with also, getting out of the house, meeting others, addressing some of those feelings of isolation that are quite common in grief. So I have included here the link to Community Gardens Ireland. And there is various community gardens all over the country that you can look up in case it's something you might want to get involved with. If you are gardening on your own, I suppose my advice would be to keep it simple and to be mindful of your own capacity, to allow yourself breaks if it feels too much. Really, the feeling of exhaustion is quite common in grief. So it's not about, overworking or overdoing things when gardening, but I think to focus on the process rather than the outcome, to be mindful in the present moment rather than be working towards, a specific thing you want to grow, a specific outcome you want to achieve when gardening. To be patient, to be compassionate with yourself in that. And then the last kind of nature activity I wanted to talk to you about today is open water swimming. In a scoping review of 14 studies, it is suggested that swimming in nature is likely to have positive effects on mental health and well-being. And I suppose that matches with how those that do regularly open water swim would describe sort of the experience as very positive. People would say, there's a sense of personal achievement in going out and swimming in nature. It can become routine for people. Certainly a lot of people that swim every day and it's part of their routine, and that's kind of helpful. There's also often a sense of community between open water swimmers, which is helpful. And the water can feel like a place of refuge, which is often much needed in grief, to get a break from it all, to get to switch off while in the water, while just feeling your body in the water that is often just cold in Ireland. A word of caution: if you are planning on going open water swimming, to consult reputable sources in preparing for that swim. Again, to be mindful of your own abilities and to be safe when you're going out there. Swim Ireland offers practical advice around open water swimming. They have their website there that you can check out. And there is a book that I can recommend. It's called This Is My Sea by an Irish author, Miriam McKay. And she writes about her experience with grief and how sea swimming was a resource to her in her grief. So that concludes the presentation part of today's session. I will stop the recording now.